Good evening. I'll now call this meeting to order. Our first order of business is to adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting. Commissioners, is there a motion to adopt the final agenda?
Make a motion to adopt the final agenda.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Our next order of business is to adopt the minutes from our June 17th, 2025 Planning Commission meeting. Commissioners, is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes?
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Motion carries. So we'll now move to our discussion items. The first item for discussion tonight is item 3.1, which is a sketch plat for the Bell Maple Farm residential development. As the commission knows, the sketch plat review is our initial stage of review and we consider the proposal at a fairly high level regarding the development, any concerns that are expressed. No formal actions or recommendations at this stage taken by the Planning Commission at the sketch plat review, or for that matter, the City Council. It's really just for input. So we'll give the applicant an opportunity to review. I'd remind anybody in the audience that's interested that there's no formal public hearing associated with this, but neighborhood input is always important. So if you have input, by all means, reach out to the city staff by email or in person. Feel free to share your input that way. At later stages, then there'll be an opportunity at the public hearing to share more formal input. I'll now turn it over to City Planner Brian McCann for a staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair and Planning Commissioners. Bear with me here tonight a little bit. I'm feeling a little under the weather, so I might lose my voice. But we are looking at the Bell Maple Farm residential development. They have submitted a sketch plat request to get feedback from the Planning Commission and City Council. As the Chair noted, we won't be taking any approvals this evening or recommendations. So it's just to provide guidance to the applicant as they start to think through any of their future applications. Looking at the location area, it does consist of one large parcel, about 8 acres in size, as well as a small portion of right-of-way, about 1/4 acre in size. It is north and east of land owned by the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum. It's south of existing private development within Victoria boundaries. It's west of Chanhassen's existing residential development. As you can see here, the Victoria-Chanhassen line is split right on the east side of the development. It's also in close proximity to the Lake Minnetonka Regional Trail, which you can see a portion of in the image up in the upper left. For this site, they are proposing 15 single-family homes. Looking at the existing conditions of the site, it's generally flat, dry land. They do have one existing single family on the property currently. There's also a driveway access cutting through the property, which also services the property to the west. And the property is within 1,000 feet of Lake St. Joe and Lake Tamarack. So here's the proposal in front of you this evening, consisting of those 15 single-family homes, as well as a stormwater pond and proposed lift station to service the development. The shoreline boundaries are shown in the light blue, with the distance from Tamarack Lake and Lake St. Joe, as well as the existing driveway and the proposed driveway realignment after development occurs. So looking at our comprehensive plan, this property is guided for low-density residential in our 2040 plan. It was also guided for a similar type of development in our 2030 comprehensive plan. Amendments would be required regarding the conservation residential district. It's within that shoreland, which makes it tough to meet our shoreland 1.21 units per acre. For the conservation areas, but the single family portions will meet our minimum criteria. So they're gonna kind of split the site here between those two districts to make it work. So here's what it would look like. We would just have the map line up with our shoreland areas to meet the minimum density guidance for the low density while providing that flexibility for areas within shoreland. Looking at the zoning, it is currently zoned R1 low-density residential. A lot of the developments you've seen recently have been part of annexations, so they've been automatically established as agricultural. This one's a little different. It is already zoned R1, so a developer could move in, meet the minimum bulk standards, and the city would have to approve that development because that's what the property is guided for. So looking at the bulk standards of the R1 specifically, every single lot that is proposed is meeting the minimum standards of our R1 district or our shoreland requirements for those lots that are at least 50% encompassed within shoreland area. Looking at the product types, these are some of the renderings that were submitted by the applicant. The proposed building sizes would range between 4,000 to 6,000 square feet in size, and each plan for those 15 homes is proposed to be a unique plan. So a different type of product for each lot within this development. Looking at streets, parking, and pedestrian connections, they're proposing a public 28-foot wide street in accordance with our engineering standards with a temporary cul-de-sac and sidewalk on one side. Parking would be allowed on both sides of the street because it meets our minimum public street width. And then the temporary cul-de-sac is shown just in case development does occur in the future further west for the property adjacent to this site. Our parking standards require 2 enclosed spaces per dwelling unit based on the renderings that were shown. Those evaluations should be met. Looking at our landscaping and tree preservation standards, they'll need to place boulevard trees, a minimum of 3 trees per R1 lot, and then a minimum 50% open space requirement in accordance with our landscape code. These will be evaluated as well as tree preservation at preliminary plat if they decide to move forward. And then I mentioned there are portions within the shoreland district. It's within 1,000 feet of Lake St. Joe and Lake Tamarack, which I highlighted cutting through the site. There is also a portion of a DNR protected stream running to the west, but they are outside the 300-foot boundary for that area. What the standards need to be for those single-family homes I showed on one of the previous slides, but they would be allowed a maximum 25% impervious per lot. They need a minimum 20,000 square foot lot size, a minimum 125-foot lot width. The homes have to be at least 150 feet from the ordinary high water line, and there's limited grading or vegetation removal within the shoreland areas. Looking at park dedication, for the 15 homes, what it comes out to be is 0.7 acres or just over $73,000 in cash in lieu of land. So they are not proposing any parks or trails with this development, and a connection to the Lake Minnetonka Regional Trail is not feasible due to adjacent property owners and grading for the site. The Parks and Recreation Committee did review this at their meeting on June 16th, and they were supportive of cash fee in lieu of land for this development. Looking at grading and stormwater management, it's within the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, so their rules apply here. Wetlands, if applicable, need to be included in buffers that are deeded to the city, and any stormwater ponds should have an access provided within an outlet. Looking at site utilities, they will be extended from Interlochen to the west. So here on the image on the upper right is where the utilities currently terminate in the Interlochen neighborhood, just on the west side of the Lake Minnetonka Regional Trail. As part of a land swap with the Landscape Arboretum, they did dedicate a 50-foot wide drainage and utility easement, which comes up to this boundary here. So this developer is working with this adjacent property owner to get an additional easement to get the utilities extended to their site. So what that looks like right now, the yellow is the existing easement that was acquired with the Arboretum. Orange is what they need to accomplish this, and then that will bring it down to the street towards the lift station on the right side of the image on the bottom. And then just some additional context, the Planning Commission and the City Council only review developments after an application is made. A concept was previously explored last August with Chanhassen. The Chanhassen City Council did not grant utility extensions. There was some severe neighborhood opposition, and Norton Homes decided that they would have to pursue either a private utility system to make their utilities work or wait for Victoria Utilities to come to this area. So that land swap that I mentioned earlier occurred back in March with the City Council. Now that Victoria Utilities are available, Norton Homes can pursue development. As I mentioned, they'll still need that additional easement to make this work. But that area, that 50-foot easement, was engineered and reviewed for the shortest optimal route. There are some significant grades out there, and so an engineer took a look at the area to see where utilities could come from Interlochen, where it makes the most sense. And it just happened to go up next to that adjacent boundary of the neighboring property. So 2 neighborhood meetings did occur with this. The first one happened in the city of Chanhassen at their recreation center on August 21st. There were about 30 attendees at that meeting, and the neighborhood, as I mentioned, was very opposed to any development. They were previously told by city staff that the property would be preserved open space and would never develop. They also expressed concerns of insufficient streets and parks to accommodate any additional development, and they were opposed to Chanhassen Utilities aiding Victoria development. And then most recently, a neighborhood meeting was held in Victoria where approximately 4 attendees spoke. They continued to express concerns regarding those inadequate infrastructure, the streets, the parks, also expressing concerns about noise and dust during construction. And then they also expressed some transparency concerns regarding that 50-foot drainage and utility easement that I mentioned. So with that, as I mentioned at the beginning, no action is required this evening, but I did provide a few bullet points to guide the discussion this evening. I can stand for any questions, and a representative of the application is in the audience tonight.
Thank you, Brian. Does the applicant wish to speak? Start with your name, please.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chair and Planning Commission members. My name is Pat Hiller, one of the partners with Norton Homes. Brian did a nice job summarizing the project, so I won't add to that right now, but I'll be available for questions if you have any.
Great, thank you, Mr. Hiller. I'll now open the floor for Planning Commission discussion. As I mentioned, there's not an opportunity at this meeting for public input. We've had one city meeting, and neighbors, others concerned are always welcome to contact city staff. So commissioners, no formal motions required. So any questions, concerns at this point, high-level observations about the proposed sketch plat?
Sure. I just have a couple of clarifying questions. Brian, can you go back to the topo map and just clarify a little bit better, where was the land swap with the Arboretum and the city?
Chair and Commissioner, yeah, let me find the best slide for that.
That'll work.
I think this one would probably be better. Just because it gives us the entire area for reference. So here is the termination of Interlochen. It's a street currently within Victoria boundaries with, you can see some existing single-family homes. Then there's the Lake Minnetonka Regional Trail. And then on the opposite side of the trail, there are some properties here that the city did acquire, I believe about 15 years ago. And we acquired these because they were originally platted for development. You can see this plat was recorded. These lots were supposed to be built upon.
That's what I was.
Yeah.
Confusions.
And a road was supposed to be extended through here, which would get to the other side to serve this portion of the city of Victoria. It never came to fruition. And so as part of a land swap with the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum to facilitate some of our bigger traffic or street construction plans right now regarding Highway 5, County Roads 13, County Road 18. We swapped these lands here with the easement areas that we needed along the landscape arboretum's land to, for them to use and so that we can move through with our transportation projects. And part of that,
So that square from the end of the, where the utility ends now, that is now Victoria, city-owned.
no. So the Lake Minnetonka Regional Trail
Right.
is or was owned by the Hennepin County Regional Trail Authority. These properties here are owned by the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum now. But there is a 50-foot wide drainage and utility easement through the site, which I highlighted in yellow here,
Yep.
that the city does have, and that's how utilities would get to the site.
And those utilities run, upon extension, would they run underneath or over the creek?
They would be underneath, so they would be directionally bored underground so that we wouldn't have to take out any trees or any other vegetation.
And do we know whether the existing home in that square, right around the existing house, could that be potentially further subdivided?
Yes, that could be in the, decided they did want to sell their land and subdivide. I don't believe they're interested at the moment, though.
No, it just sounds like there's some family discussion as to what's gonna happen there. So I just was wondering what options did they have, and has Norton had any conversations with the family about what might happen with that home?
Commissioner Bean, it's owned by us, one of the family members, Alex Wilson, owns that parcel to the west, and I have been talking with him on a regular basis, mostly about just acquiring the 50-foot easement corridor for the utilities and then the driveway realignment. He's not expressed an interest in selling the land to us at this point, and we're not really talking about that at this juncture.
Okay,
We're just trying to get the other two things done here, get the easements, so the project.
that's enough to chew on. I get that. I just was curious.
Thanks, Bob. Any other questions from the Planning Commission?
Question. So they are wanting it to be a public street, so meaning that the city of Victoria would be plowing for snow. How does that work, being that access to that is going to be through Chanhassen? Is Chanhassen going to be doing that, or are we?
Chair and commissioners, that's a great question. It would be City of Victoria, so we would have a plow truck go out to this area to plow this street.
So I guess my recommendation and thought would be, instead of having it be a public street, have it be a private, and have that neighborhood, be in charge of plowing and up for, one of our trucks to go all the way out through Chanhassen and all the way back down and around. Just my thoughts.
Other comments, commissioners?
Ryan, has this always been zoned R1 or did it change at some point?
As long as I've been here, it's been zoned R1. It looks like it's been guided that way since at least the 2030 plan, which was formulated in 2008. So I'm going to guess it's been zoned that way for at least that long.
Thanks.
Okay. With the addition now of R1 conservation
Correct.
Right.
within the shoreline district. Good. Other comments, questions? If not, we'll close the discussion. This item does not, again, require any approval or action on behalf of the Planning Commission tonight. So with that, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is sketch plat for the shores of Marsh Lake 2nd, addition residential development. Similar to our last item, sketch plat review, since we'll have no formal motion, it's intended to provide feedback for the developer. I'll now turn the table over to City Planner Brian McCannon for staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair and Planning Commissioners. Once again, similar to the last item that you just reviewed, we are just giving feedback to the developer. We are not taking any approvals or actions tonight.
Okay.
So just provide them guidance based on what you see and discuss this evening. Looking at the development, the total area is 4 parcels, about 42 acres in size, but only about 6 of them are the actual project area that we're looking at. so the area in blue here. It consists of one currently platted lot within the shores of Marsh Lake development, as well as 2 small outlots and 1 unplatted lot within Laketown Township. This property is intersected by County Road 43. The proposed development is south of Marsh Lake Road here. It's north of Marsh Lake. And with this about 6-acre area, they are proposing 5 new single-family homes, as well as a lot line adjustment for the existing single-family home out there. The properties are currently vacant with some steep slopes. There's the one home on the west side of County Road 43, but they are not proposing any development on this side of the street this evening. There are some wetlands close to the development because it is so close to Marsh Lake. There are not any current access points to County Road 43 or Marsh Lake Road on this property. There is an emergency access here to Marsh Lake Road, but the street and utility connections would come from the stub street at the end of Lakeside Drive here within the shore. The entire project area is within the shoreland district because it's within 1,000 feet of Marsh Lake. So here is the proposed sketch plat this evening. You can see the 5 new lots, lots 1 through 4, block 2, and lot 1, block 1, and then they would be readjusting the lot line of lot 1, block 2 to fit this additional home here. So with that, they're extending utilities and the street of Lakeside Drive for a cul-de-sac. They're also showing a sidewalk on the north side of the street, a continuation of the sidewalk that's already there currently, as well as some open space areas. And in purple here is the existing right-of-way for County Road 43. Outlot B here is proposed for some additional right-of-way for the county because the county does have plans at some point to upgrade the intersection of County Road 43 and Marsh Lake Road. So looking at the comprehensive plan, it's guided for low-density residential with very small portions of open space kind of lining up where those wetlands are. The proposed density for this development comes out to 1.35 units per acre, 6 units over about 4.5 acres after that right-of-way reduction. And the comprehensive plan amendment is also anticipated for that conservation residential we talked about and a right-of-way adjustment. It's also worth noting that this property is not currently within our growth phasing area. It's guided for development between 2031 and 2040. What that means is we're just going to have to take a closer look at this to make sure our utility projections can accommodate these 5 new additional homes with the development. So it shouldn't require too in-depth of an analysis, but it is something that the Plan Commission and City Council should be aware of. Then looking at annexation rezoning, a portion of the property, the notably larger piece here is within Laketown Township, so annexation is required. When that happens, it would automatically be zoned agricultural. So what they are proposing is a planned unit development with underlying R1 low-density residential. As part of that, they would also be requesting a residential shoreline planned unit development, similar to what happened in the Shores of Marsh Lake development. What that does is it just allows deviations to our shoreline requirements, similar to how our PUD allows us to revise our standards. A shoreline PUD allows them to revise shoreline standards. So at sketch plat, you are looking at input on the acceptability of any type of planned unit development. Keep in mind that they should be sensitive to environmental, cultural, and economic considerations in partnership with public values. So the bulk standards that they are proposing to deviate from include the minimum lot area with a reduction from 12,000 square feet to 10,000, as well as a reduction in lot width from 80 feet to 65 feet, in the front setback from 30 feet to 25 feet, and the side setback down from 10 to 7.5 feet. I will note that all of these standards are the ones that were incorporated with the Shores of Marsh Lake plat that this is basically an extension for. And then the shoreland deviations are that 10,000 square feet instead of 20,000 for the lot area, 65 instead of 125 for the lot width, and increasing the maximum impervious up to 33%. So these are just some screenshots of some of the existing homes out in the shores of Marsh Lake currently. This is coming from the same developer, so the same product types would be incorporated with the extension of this neighborhood. And then for streets, parking, and pedestrian connections, they are also proposing a public 28-foot wide street with the cul-de-sac. This one would be a permanent cul-de-sac, not a temporary one. Parking would be allowed on both sides of the streets. Part of this is if this development follows through, there are too many houses on a single access point from Marsh Lake Road, according to fire code. So what needs to happen is an emergency access needs to be incorporated. Similar to the West Creek Village development that you just saw recently, they had an emergency access onto County Road 10. Our fire department would need an emergency access here to County Road 43. Looking at those product types for the single-family homes, they would meet our minimum requirements of those 2 enclosed spaces per unit for parking as well. And then they have the sidewalk on the north side, as I mentioned earlier. So for landscape and tree preservation, they would need to incorporate boulevard trees, the minimum plantings of 3 trees per R1 lot, and that minimum 50% development open space. It should also be noted here that buffers come into play, being adjacent to County Road 43 and having lots with 2 frontages on Lakeside Drive and on Marsh Lake Road in the back. And we'll take a closer look at all these standards as well as tree preservation during preliminary plat. So as I mentioned, the development area that they're looking at is entirely within the Shoreland Overlay District. They are proposing the deviations, which I highlight in red. All of the homes building pads that they showed do meet the 150-foot ordinary high water line setback, and there is limited grading and vegetation removal allowed. We did send this one to the DNR for review because they are asking for the RSPUD. I haven't got any comments back yet, but we really don't need them until preliminary plat anyway. That's when they'll be formally notified and when we'll be asking for very specific comments from them. So that RSPUD, as I mentioned, we sent it off to the DNR. We haven't got anything back yet, but they will provide formal comments at preliminary plat. As part of that, they need to do what's called a tier analysis. And how that works is they take a certain distance from the shoreline and they call it a tier, and they break that up into 4 tiers. And what they do is they limit the allowable density within each tier. Within the first 2 tiers, I think you only get 50% of allowable density and then 100%. But after that, the further away you are from the lake, they essentially give you a density bonus where you can increase the amount of density you have. That doesn't really come into play here. Just wanted to give you all some background. Since we are looking within those first 2 tiers, what their allowable unit count basically comes out to be is a maximum number of 14 units. Now they're proposing 6. If they were proposing more, we would typically see a variance request. We don't anticipate that in this case. Then looking at park dedication, about a 1/4 acre is what the calculation comes out to be, or about 25,000. They are not proposing any parks or trails. It's worth noting there is an existing private park within the shores of Marsh Lake development, and that a trail will likely occur in the future along County Road 43 with any future reconstruction. This was also reviewed by the Parks and Rec Committee on June 16th, and they were supportive of cash fee in lieu of land for this development as well. So for grading and stormwater management, this one's also within the MCWD's area, so they have to meet their wetland impact mitigation requirements. They have to plat any wetlands and buffers that are deeded to the city, and any stormwater facilities should have an access provided so that the city can access these stormwater areas. And then for site utilities, as I mentioned earlier, they'll be extended from Lakeside Drive with the road. One of the comments on the city review memo is an extension of utilities to the edge of County Road 43. We want that for future utilities to be extended across the road in the future. There are some properties within Laketown Township. They're running out of available area for septic and well, so we're trying to get utilities there to help them because they will be annexed into the city eventually. But also, this could service any other future development out on the opposite side of County Road 43. So, regarding County Road 43, we are not quite sure when reconstruction is coming, but we know it is coming. They are looking at doing a roundabout at that County Road 43 and Marsh Lake Road intersection. So as part of this, they are requiring some additional right-of-way, which I highlighted in Outlot B for reference. And then Marsh Lake Road, it also has the potential to become county road in the future. And I highlighted some green area there. That was right-of-way that was acquired with the first shores of Marsh Lake Plat in anticipation of that future road extension. So a neighborhood meeting was had for this development. About 5 attendees showed up and had a lot of questions regarding emergency access as well as our annexation process, where the utilities are, where they'll end up, if the development will meet the high water line setbacks. Also some questions regarding the future County Road 43, where they're putting their stormwater, how they're making grading and tree removal work, and ownership and open space of the outlots. So with that, no action is required tonight. I do have some questions on the screen to guide discussion. I do have some representatives of the application in the audience, and I can stand for questions as well.
Thank you, Brian. Does the applicant wish to speak?
John Sonic with Charles Keg Company, one of the owners, and so just here to answer any questions that you would have.
Great, thank you, Mr. Sonic. I'll now open the floor for the Planning Commission to discuss the sketch plat. Again, we're at a preliminary stage, so there'd be no opportunity for neighbor input, but as always, you're welcome to contact the city staff and express any concerns that you might have. So with that, any questions, comments, concerns?
Brian, can you clarify the annexation? Is it just the spot that's going to be developed, or is it that entire blue blob?
Chair and Commissioner, that's a great question. I should have clarified that, just for the blue blob. So we are not annexing the entire parcel, just those 6 acres of the development.
So basically, what's that, like southeast of Highway 43?
Correct. Really
Just
just
down
this pocket, which I'm highlighting.
43, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so the north and west sections are not yet, will not yet be annexed if this moves forward.
Correct.
Gotcha, thanks.
Brian, maybe you can clarify, what is the distance from Lot 4 from the ordinary high water line? That seems to be about the closest of the lots.
Sure. They do have a measurement here. It is exactly at that 150-foot mark.
Okay, so they do meet that requirement.
Correct.
And when we were looking at recently a proposed build on Highway 5, on Victoria Drive, the PUD, we looked at the PUD process but thought that we couldn't use it for a small number. Here the number is 5. Can you help us as a commission understand what is that seems like a low number for a PUD.
Sure. The unique situation here is that this property was ghost platted with the shores of Marsh Lake Development, and what a ghost plat is, it's saying that they're looking at developing an additional phase in the future with a few extra lots here and there, but they haven't fully committed to that yet, either because they don't own the land or they don't have enough capital to fully build out the neighborhood yet. So this phase was always anticipated and planned for. We are just now getting to the start of the finish line for this neighborhood, if that makes sense.
Okay, thanks.
Brian, is it a new PUD or are we amending the existing PUD for Shores of Lake?
That's a good question. It's kind of both. So it's property that hasn't been zoned yet. So we have to zone it with a PUD, but the PUD, we want it to match the existing neighborhood out there. So it's a new PUD, but we're also taking the standards of the PUD that was already established.
Okay, so that was my question. Can we make that a stipulation? As far as approval, that the standards of this development would coincide with the existing PUD requirements?
Correct, and that's what the applicant is proposing this evening.
Can I just get some clarification? You had said that they are asking for 33% impervious.
Correct.
Is that the same as the rest of the marsh? So all of them are also 33%?
Correct.
Okay.
And the new PUD and rezoning only applies to the 6 acres, not to the property across.
Correct. Yep.
And the extension of the utilities out to County Road 43, could they run through or adjacent to that emergency access?
I believe they could. I'll have to confirm that with my engineering and fire department. I think that would be the ideal scenario, just so we don't have larger of an easement than we actually need.
Right.
But yeah, that's something we'll have to take a closer look at with preliminary plat.
And as I was noted in the neighborhood meeting, but will that emergency access be gated, similar to what we talked about?
Correct. Our fire department would require that would be gated.
Did you ever find out whether we can automate the gate?
I did not, actually. My apologies for that.
No problem. I'm just picking on you.
Just a comment on that. We put this breakaway down.
John,
Please
would
go
you
to the
mind?
microphone.
In other I've about 4 or 5 of these in North Oaks, in a bunch of small areas like that, and it's just a breakaway. So if the fire department ran it over, we just come back and put it back up. In other words,
The one we were talking about was actually gonna be locked
yeah,
with a padlock, with a key.
we actually put down either the tip-down ballards. So the fire truck drives it over, and when they're done, they tip themselves back up. But we have a neighbor that really wants privacy, because where we need this exit to go and the sewer line to go is gonna keep the headlights still shining in her front window. And so I told her that, we'd have a fence, and so basically we just have breakaway hinges on the fence. So the fire truck could drive up, and either they could go up and tip it over, or they could just drive over with the fire truck, and then we pick up afterwards. The only time it's ever going through there is if the other end has a big, crash in it. So you've got somebody blocking the other end of the neighborhood. Would the fire ever come back around this way to try and get up the hill to get it that way? So it's not a problem for us to deal with it that way.
I mean, it is a pretty long cul-de-sac as it is, so if I had a medical emergency, I'd sure like to know that they could bolt into my back door there.
Yeah, and you gotta understand, we have a great big circle street, so the length of this cul-de-sac is only 7 houses long. The neighborhood happens to have 37 minus, not that many on this end. And if you look at it, it's only limited by the fact that it has a single entrance. Otherwise, they have 2 different directions to go once they're in. So unless there was a big crash that happened on the input road, there's 2 ways around the neighborhood, and there's only 7 houses past the end of it and that. So, and again, whether or not the firemen normally have a fire key that gets into hydrants and commercial building stuff, so we can put that padlock on it too, as far as that goes.
Okay.
It's just for privacy, light purposes, the neighbor is really asking that we put up something that will help block the headlights.
Which house is the neighbor where the
Can
headlights?
you use your mouse and show the little farmhouse there straight
this
off
one?
the end of our road there, yeah.
Is this one you're talking about, John?
Probably the one across.
So we've got headlights flashing into that
She's
home.
saying that we've got, when they come down the end of our current cul-de-sac and turn and spin, that it shines lights into her.
Wow, because there's a lot of trees between her house
I
and,
agree I'll do what I can for the neighbors.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions, commissioners?
What was the grant of the lot reduction on the other adjacent property?
All the proposed PUD standards that I showed were what was approved with the shores of Marsh Lake. So the 10,000 square foot lot area, 65-foot lot width, this whole slide right here.
Those were all approved in the existing one.
Correct.
And then the other question is related to the setback, the wetland setback on building on the property. It's 150 feet, right? I think on the map it showed 100.
There's actually a 100-foot city buffer from the wetland up, but the building setback itself is 100.
So does that 150 get anywhere near where a pool might go on any of those properties?
Chair and commissioners, yes, it would. Specifically for lots 3 and 4, I could see that scenario happening. For reference, for those in the audience, we've had a few individuals in the past approach us about variances for a pool to the ordinary high water line setback, which is 150 feet no matter the structure, whether it's pool, deck, the back of your house, everything. So in that scenario, yes, someone would likely come forward with a variance request to that setback.
I'm just thinking back to the fire department easement. And not necessarily on this, but just because it keeps coming up in a couple different locations around the city. I'd say maybe we really do look at, what would be the easiest, best option for the fire department to access these areas. And see what best gate option there is.
That's good input. Commissioners, any other questions? If not, we'll close this off for tonight. Again, no formal action is required at this point in time. So with that, we'll move on to the miscellaneous items in the agenda. Any miscellaneous items from staff, Brian?
Sure, thank you, Chair. So we have a lot of community events going on, so if you haven't got out to the farmers market or the classic car night yet, be sure to do so. And then at our next meeting, we're hoping on bringing back our next chapter of the zoning code, which I'm sure you're all thrilled about and can't wait to dive right back into it. And then August will be busy. We've already got some more sketch plat requests coming in, some more zoning code changes happening. So just please keep me posted if you're not able to make any future meetings. That's all from staff.
Thank you, Brian. Commissioners, any miscellaneous items?
I've got one to check in on the supercar garage over in the neighborhood. The question would be, obviously we're sympathetic to that going up and the fact that that could go kind of in a lot of different neighborhoods. Have we considered having some sort of an amendment? I know grandfathered in and we went through and, it is what it is. It met the rules and we couldn't really say no with an honest answer. But as we go forward and look at that, if that were to happen in somebody else's neighborhood, does that precedent, something we want to set to let that kind of thing go? Or is there something we can put in there for the city council, or has that been considered?
Yes, it is being considered. We do have a draft ordinance prepared. We are kind of put on hold with some of the internal review of our wider zoning code. But if it's a rush request that the Planning Commission and City Council would like to see through, it's something that we can bring sooner than later.
Very good. Yeah, I think we all felt pretty uncomfortable about that. This is the property on Smithtown Road where the owner built, 40-car garage with pickleball court inside, and it was sort of the ultimate man cave. And I think all of us, including the neighbors around, felt like this was inconsistent with the property around it, but it was entirely consistent with the zoning code as it exists today. So Ben's point is quite simply, we'd like to look at maybe an ordinance that would limit the size of these structures in a planful way. So, not to be unfair, but so that people are aware when they buy parcels like this that there are limitations on what they can do.
Sure.
Well, that garage would be considered accessory space under Victoria's code?
Commissioner Bean, it's a little before you started, but they attached the garage to the main structure, so their house, so it is not considered accessory at that point.
So different definitions from what I'm used to.
Got it.
Any other miscellaneous items? If not, commissioners, no more items this evening. Can I ask for a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all.